Good morning, everyone. For this Saturday morning set of panels about the IWBC SABR Women's Baseball Conference. I have a couple of housekeeping. Turn off all your mics and cameras during the presentations because it'll help us run smoother. Use the chat if you have any questions. I also want to thank Rockford University and Kathy Headley and her crew for putting this together. Kathy can't join us today, but she's been instrumental in organizing all this. So without further ado, our first presentation is Callie Maddox, and I am not going to read her whole bio, but Callie Maddox is an assistant professor in the Department of Sport Leadership and Management at Miami University. And she will be speaking on baseball in the sport for development and peace movement, promises and potentials for gender equality. So Callie, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to share my screen real quick. All right, how's that look?
Looks good.
Oh, good.
Looks
Okay,
good.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm never quite sure. Good morning, friends. I'm delighted to kick off our proceedings for today. Quick, standard work from home Zoom disclaimers apply here. I apologize in advance for any small humans or animals that might pop in at any point. Today, when I heard the theme of the conference for this year, celebrating Title IX and this very significant anniversary, I certainly reflected on that. I am a child of Title IX. I have benefited from not only that piece of legislation, but from the work and the courage of the women who came before me to open up these sporting spaces, to fight for the right to participate. And I take that very seriously. But I do realize that we also have a lot of work to still do, particularly in the realm of looking at baseball. And for me, it's about really chipping away or kind of knocking down these dominant cultural norms around the roles of gender in baseball, and why we still kind of have this very stubborn idea that girls and women should not be playing baseball. So I was really reflecting on that and kind of thinking about what I wanted to offer for the conference this year. And I came upon this idea of sharing my work in the sport for development and peace movement. And I think there's real potential for baseball to contribute within this movement at a grassroots level, at this idea of bringing up the youth, of exposing the benefits of sport participation, both for individuals and broader communities. And this is a cross-cultural context. So what I'd like to do today is give kind of a crash course in the sport for development and peace movement. I'll refer to this as the SDP movement, and then also reflect on the role of baseball within this movement. And I'm going to highlight a few organizations that are working within this movement using baseball as their key tool. Let's do that. There we go. So the sport for development and peace movement is not new. Its philosophical grounding comes out of Olympism and this idea that sport is a unifying force, that we should all look to our common humanity, particularly within sporting spaces, and that sport holds this potential to bring us together. Nelson Mandela in 2000 gave this kind of now famous speech where he said, essentially, sport has the power to change the world. And I think if we're sports fans, if we have participated in sport, we kind of know this at our core. But this really launched an idea and a movement to say, how can we do this? How can we tangibly create this change in and through sport, using sport as a vehicle for social change? This idea really caught on in the early 2000s, and it culminated with a resolution from the United Nations in 2003, declaring sport as a viable and useful tool for international development. And after that, we saw really kind of a rise of a lot of organizations starting to work within this space. And the idea is quite simple. The idea is to use sport at a grassroots community level to bring about development and peace initiatives, So working in areas of conflict to bring people together, to enhance public health. There's been a lot of interventions using sport to raise awareness and education about HIV and AIDS and malaria. It's about social inclusion, particularly for people with disabilities. How can we use sport for social inclusion? For education, how can we get more kids involved in education? Does sport have a role to play in that? And then also gender equality. How can sport be that vehicle to enhance and encourage gender equality? And within the movement, there's kind of two philosophical ways of working. One is called plus sport, and the other is sport plus. And this just means if you're working on a sport plus model, that sport is at the center. So you're going to offer sport, and then plus you have all these other benefits: educational benefit, gender equality, public health, whatever the focus may be. The plus sport is that you put those other elements first, and you're adding sport in as a mechanism to make those happen. So those are the key kind of two differences in this movement here. Key stakeholders, we have the United Nations, very active in this. They actually had an office on sport for development and peace that closed in 2017. It was a little controversial, a little mysterious, but it really worked to make this movement worldwide and really accepted, right? That this is a key thing to do. Like, this is okay. This is working. We can put our energies and our money towards this because we're seeing results. The Swiss Academy for Development has been a key player since the start in terms of funding and in terms of being active out in the field. National and local governments. The United States government has not been so active in this realm, but the Canadian government has been very active. Other sort of national governments also step in with funding as well. National or non-governmental organizations, and sport bodies play a key role. We have various NGOs. I started my career with Right to Play. I worked with Right to Play for quite some time in Uganda, and we've just seen kind of a real explosion of NGOs in this space. And then also sport governing bodies have gotten involved too. And then you have the private sector who are also contributing. So Nike will have certain programs that they support that are working in this realm. They're really looking at that at grassroots social development, and various other companies as well too. The goals here are really this emphasis on grassroots. So this is about sport for all. This is about harnessing that power of sport for everybody. So it's not about making elite athletes. It's not about elite competition. It's not about organizing elite international tournament play or focusing on professional opportunities. This is about everybody. And that's what really drew me to this movement, that it's about sport for all, that everyone can benefit from this. And we can see that power really kick in at that grassroots level. Oh, they work within a human rights framework. So the idea that the access to participating sport is a basic human right, that everybody needs to have access to physical activity, to movement, to finding that joy in participating in sports, particularly with others, and that it can have that power of community. The first kind of, I guess, really boosting movement here was focused on the Millennium Development Goals. So this was really the key first impetus to get out there and do this work. Now there's been a shift to the Sustainable Development Goals, which the United Nations has released. They're aiming at 2030 to accomplish some of these ideas. But these are kind of a framework to say, how can we use sport to intervene and accomplish these international goals that we have? It's about empowering participants in communities, so involving the participants that are participating and that are receiving these programs. How can we engage in evaluation and monitoring? How do we know that it's working? That's been a big question. How do we tease out the impact of these programs? Are they doing what we hope they're doing? And then transparency and sustainability. How can we ensure that these programs are sustainable, that the communities that are being served take them on and have a long-lasting life with the benefits and the impacts of these programs? So I mentioned the Sustainable Development Goals. Here they are. And again, this is the United Nations framework for looking at really, really important, key, significant issues around the world and identifying spaces and sites where we can intervene and accomplish these goals. So obviously, sort of for me here, number 5, gender equality is certainly an important one. And I think this is, sport can have a really significant role to play for number 5 and others of these as well too. So now I'd like to shift into baseball's role in this movement. And it's been, how do I want to phrase it? Increasing, maybe. Hasn't really had a strong presence in the past. I did some research and I found some data. There's over 900 SDP organizations currently working over 120 countries. This is a number that includes only very specific NGOs, very specific community-driven organizations. So this doesn't include the Los Angeles Dodgers Community Foundation going out and running programs. So this does not include professional sport organizations programs. This is really just grassroots independent organizations and agencies going out there and doing this work. So that's a lot. And it's growing every year. But 48% of these programs use a multi-sport model. So they're using more than one sport. Most of them will still use soccer and then add in additional sports as well too. Soccer arguably is the most significant or popular sport to use in this movement because it's the most popular sport in the world. So we see a lot of agencies using soccer and focusing on that. Basketball, rugby, Indigenous games a little bit. That's been a key point of debate within the movement. How do we incorporate Indigenous sports and games? And then baseball, it was so small in this data. It got mentioned, but was not we don't know. It's so small that it is not significant within the statistics here. But that said, there are organizations that are using baseball. And I think from my viewpoint with this, baseball responds well to this key point of recognizing the appropriateness of a certain sport in the local context. And this is a really important point to reflect on. If you are working in a particular area, what are the issues there? Which sport will respond best to those issues? And I think if we think about gender, baseball in certain contexts can respond really well to this sport because it has globalized certainly in certain areas of the world, but in other contexts, it's a completely new sport. It comes in stripped of any of the gendered connotations that it might have in other spots, including the United States, which is what we wrestle with here in our own local context. So I think if you think about soccer comes in already with a whole host of meanings, and it can be difficult to divorce those meanings from what you're trying to accomplish with your SDP programming. So I just want to run through a couple of organizations that are using baseball, and then I'll focus on Play Global, which is the organization I'm involved with. One is Project Baseball, and they're working in Latin America. And they really, I think, they straddle that plus sport and sport plus model in that they focus on education, and it's about cultural exchange. And baseball happens to be the vehicle that they're using for this. And again, I think in the context of Latin America, baseball will have a certain cultural meaning. So it might be a little bit more difficult to, again, kind of tease out those differences. Are you coming in with preconceived notions of girls and women's participation? Is this an effective way to kind of knock down those notions or those meanings that might be embedded in those cultural contexts? So interesting work being done here. There's one organization in Bangladesh called Sports for Hope and Independence. They use a multi-sport model, but they include baseball. And they work a lot with girls' empowerment and skill development, and they do a lot of programming for people with disabilities as well too. And again, this idea that sport is a mechanism to involve communities, to grow an individual, to break down certain cultural stereotypes and cultural norms. And I don't know how much they use baseball here. I think it's just they've just done a couple of little things with it, but I think the potential in a cultural context like Bangladesh could be tremendous. This one is based in Egypt. It's called Because Baseball. And again, the overriding impetus here, building bridges, this idea of bringing communities together, that there might be areas of conflict within certain communities. How can baseball serve as this vehicle, this perhaps a more neutral type of sporting activity where everybody comes in at a certain level? And can really focus on their shared common humanity, which is what they're trying to do here. A very small program, they're just kind of getting going. But again, they are deliberately incorporating girls and women into their programming as well too. So they're very cognizant of that. And then finally, I'd like to focus on Play Global. I've been working with Play Global for many years now. It's got to be going on about 8 years now. I serve on their board of directors, very good friends with the people who founded the organization and who run it, the day-to-day operations. And it's been really important for me to be involved in this because it's something I have experience in. And then I also, again, see this potential that I think there's a lot of good work that can be done. And Play Global not only does sort of youth coaching and youth development and certainly exposing baseball to youth, but their focus is on education, on coach education, on umpire education. And so they're really filling a need and linking this idea of gaining baseball knowledge, playing knowledge, but also coaching and umpiring and administrative roles as well too. So it really contributes to this sustainability. So a goal to have this long-lasting impact. And Play Global works in a variety of cultural contexts. They've run programs in Israel that bring Arab and Jewish kids together in and through baseball. It's been very successful. South Africa, Uganda, a lot of youth development in Uganda, and then Ukraine as well too. Obviously, the programming in Ukraine hasn't happened for the past couple of years, but they're really hoping to get back there soon. And again, there's conflict resolution involved in that programming as well. And again, the idea of gender equality is embedded within this programming. So not only offering the programming to boys and girls equally, but also being very proactive in including women coaches and really having an idea of bringing up that educational side. So Play Global runs a program in Kyrgyzstan every summer. And in 2021, we sent Britt Minder, who works for the Minnesota Twins, to be our coach there. And she ran this incredible, fabulous program for these kids in Kyrgyzstan. And so it's important to see that representation for the gender equality, to have the women taking on the leadership roles here. And again, it's about developing that grassroots understanding and the expectation that women have a role to play across these kind of baseball programming. Not just as players, coaches, doing the administrative work, learning how to be an umpire. So Play Global has done a lot of online trainings as well too during COVID. And again, the deliberate incorporation of girls and women has been a strong point in their work as well too. Our newest program, our newest project will be in Bhutan. And we've been working closely there with their baseball and softball federation, which is relatively new. And from the start, it's been about equal opportunity for the boys and the girls and for the men and the women, adults who are taking on the leadership roles. So again, big focus on coach education here, a focus on umpires as well too, as well as the player development. And for in Bhutan, it's about reaching across the communities to bring the communities together in kind of the spirit of play. So future potential for this movement and for baseball within this movement, working towards gender equality in these cultural contexts, I think we need to leverage our common commitment. If we look across sort of these organizations that are doing work, the goals are similar. So how do we really work together to pursue those goals and to capture the commitments that we have? How do we ensure that these programs are having the impact that we want them to have, we need to leverage the efforts there. Partnerships and cooperation are really important. So particularly within using baseball, because it's so small, and sort of, the efforts here, how can we all work together? How can all of these organizations come together, engage in some partnerships and cooperation across these common commitments? And then I think there's going to be a continuing significance and focus on coach education and umpire education, because these are important roles to fill. It's not just about playing. It's not just about developing the game on the player side at that grassroots level, having more players, but we're going to need coaches. We're going to need the umpires. We're going to need the administrative staff as well, too, to keep the program sustainable. And to have women and girls enter into those roles, incredibly important. So that's the crash course here. If you all are interested in exploring the work of these organizations, I encourage you to do so. Many of them have social media presence. You can follow along with the work, and I'll open it up to questions.
Please put your questions in the chat if you have any. I don't see any at the moment, just a lot of praise so far. It's a fascinating, great way to start a conference today. Thanks. Love the connection between sport and society. Yeah, you can read them, Callie. There's a lot.
Yeah,
of
thank you all.
nice,
Yeah.
A lot of nice comments.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah. Catherine Forslund asked if there are any programs in Korea.
Oh, that's a good question. Not that I found. It's a really good question. I'll definitely look into that. There is, if I can find it, I will put it in the chat. There's kind of an umbrella organization called Beyond Sport that captures or tries to capture the work that all of these organizations are doing worldwide. And you can search by country to see what organizations are doing work in that particular country. I'll try to find that link and I'll put it in the chat. That's a great question.
That would be great because I work with a group that's kind of looking at culture, including sport, as a way to try and move the two Koreas together.
Oh, interesting.
So,
yes. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That falls within the remit of this SDP movement, right? The conflict resolution. That's the peace side. How do we do that? That's really interesting. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So you may hear from me. I may reach out to you at some point to, find out what, connections and all that stuff. So thank you very much. This was a great presentation. I'm really excited to hear that there's all this work going on around the world because we need it. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I actually had a question. I know they're coming up. I know a lot of these third world countries, access to equipment is a big thing. And I was wondering, like, if some of these programs, how they sort of bridge that gap, because the cost of a glove, for instance, isn't cheap, or a bat or whatever.
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of a side part of many of these organizations is the equipment part. So Play Global, we work with Wilson. We have an agreement with Wilson, and Wilson will donate any kind of extra stuff that they have. I don't know if it's factory seconds or just leftover stuff. And we did a big delivery to South Africa last year, a big distribution. I know, is it Roberto's Kids, the Clemente Foundation as well too, offer some equipment that gets distributed. A lot of donations, a lot of these organizations rely on donations as well too. It's a big part of it.
Yeah. All right. Doron asks, is there any MLB involvement?
A little bit. They're certainly interested. And I think, they work, if you look internationally, MLB has a whole international wing looking to develop that elite talent, right? Starting grassroots, but they certainly have their interests in producing elite ball players. And I think they do a little bit. I think they could do more. But again, I think there's tension there of what their role is, really. What are they meant to do? We have received a little bit of support, Play Global, from MLB. There are MLB players and former players that are involved in this work as well too. Play Global has a couple of former MLB players on the advisory board who come and serve as coaches and give advice. But yeah, I think they could do more.
Megan Erskine asks, how did you get involved in Play Global?
I was through my friend Tom Gillespie, who is the co-founder of Play Global. We worked together at Baseball Softball UK. So I worked with Right to Play, which is a big SDP organization, and it shifted my career plans a bit. So I had this kind of winding career path, and I volunteered in Uganda. I was working in a refugee camp in Uganda, and finished that and thought, oh, this is cool. Like this is what sport means to me. Like this is the grassroots stuff. This is where I see a real impact. And I ended up getting a job doing development work in the UK, based in London, and Tom was also working for Baseball Softball UK. And so we hit it off. We were good friends, and we went our separate ways. We both left BSUK to do other things. And he came up with the idea to start this. And he's like, do you want to come help out? I said, of course. So it's a good partnership.
So it's a bit of a long one. Do you have any recommendations on programs or organizations here in the US? This is from Mary Weeks Taxer. She says she's the director of the Jane Addams Center at Rockford University, and they're working with programming for Boys and Girls Club located next to the Peaches Buyer Stadium. Gender equality is a component of what we're interested in.
Yeah. Mary, let me think about this one. Baseball specific?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me think about it. I haven't done a whole bunch. There are obviously, sort of SDP-esque organizations in the United States as well too, trying to do this work within our own cultural context. I haven't been too involved with those, but can I give it a think and let you know?
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Great. Yeah.
Wonderful presentation too.
Thank you.
I believe that's it. I think everything else is just, lots of kudos.
Great. Thank you all.
Anything else? Yep. Yeah, it's about 10:39, so we're good.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I love being able to present my ideas with you all. So I really appreciate it.